Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Cormor Productions, here to talk about This Is Us, Season 6, Episode 15, titled Miguel. The episode's description reads as follows. Miguel over the years. Wow. Thank you, Internet Movie Database. The episode was directed by Zetna Fuentes, who, according to articles, was handpicked by John Hurtis, series star who plays Miguel, because he wanted to capture the authentic Puerto Rican immigrant experience. The episode was written by Dan Fogelman and Johnny Gomez. John Hurtis also had influence in the writer's room, though he receives no writing credit for this episode, but apparently he was very involved with discussing his character with the writers. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't yet watched the episode, I highly recommend that you go and check it out, and then watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. Now, this was a very good episode, another one. I can make the same complaints against it that I've been making all season long. For instance, the fact that it is rushed, because of course it is. They're trying to tell someone's life story in 45 minutes. That's not something that can be done without it feeling rushed. The reason it doesn't bother me in this particular case is because I'm happy I got this episode at all. I've been clamoring for more background on Miguel for years. I've been saying that we needed to tell this story for years. And here, with only a couple episodes remaining, we finally got it. I didn't get everything that I wanted to know because of course I wasn't gonna. But I got enough that I am relatively satisfied with how this episode played out. There are some in the forums that said that they felt that this episode was unnecessary. That telling an episode about Miguel, of all people, is unnecessary this late in the show. And I do take issue with it appearing this late in the show because it should have been far sooner. But there is absolutely nothing we can do about that now. And I disagree that this episode is not important. Miguel is an important part of the show's tapestry, and his story absolutely needed to be told. And I wanted to see how exactly Rebecca and Miguel got together in the first place. There were some who were speculating that this episode would prove to be Miguel's swan song, that we were going to see Miguel die during the course of this episode, and I was in this camp. We were proved correct. Miguel does indeed die during the course of this episode, though I don't even really think we see it exactly. So in my mind, this episode was a very fitting tribute to a character who definitely did not get enough love from both the fans and at the same time within the show itself. Given the time-hopping nature of the series, I highly doubt that this will be the last time that we see Miguel in the series. At the very least, he'll turn up in a couple episodes in the finale. The early portions of this episode about Miguel's childhood were a little difficult for me to talk about. There's just not much that I can actually say. A little bit hard to connect to, given the fact that we're really just thrown into it and we've never really seen these characters before. Nevertheless, they were well acted, and I did enjoy Miguel's dad. He's played by Paul Cauldron, who has 95 acting credits to his name, including 31 episodes of the series Bosch, 1 episode of The Blacklist, 2 episodes of Blue Bloods, and 7 episodes of Boardwalk Empire. First scene that I really enjoyed in this episode was the one where Miguel goes to an interview. His name Miguel closes doors for him, so he also applies as Mike, and that gets him the interview and eventually the job, where he reveals that his actual name is Miguel. It's very subtly done, and very nicely done, I should say. We eventually get a scene between Miguel and his parents as an adult. Miguel is now a successful businessman, and his father seems to resent that. And Miguel ends up asking, "What's the deal here? You brought us to this country for us to do better, and I'm actually doing it." And his father replies, "That's a good question. Ask me again later." And I kind of felt like that was a good-humored response. Like, he seems to almost be joking when he says it. But of course, Miguel doesn't take it like that. And I like very much that the very end of this episode is Rebecca asking Miguel, "What's your story?" And then Miguel ends up repeating what his father said all those years ago. And I really liked that. I really liked that they ended the episode with that scene. To cover as much ground as they possibly could in this episode, there was a lot of rapid fire editing, cutting from one thing to another. And in the course of doing that, watching this episode, unless you watch it a couple of times, there's a lot of things that are very easy to miss. Like the fact, a lot of people were saying that Miguel's daughter wasn't mentioned, but she's actually seen in the episode. She just wasn't discussed. The one that was discussed is Miguel's son, because he was estranged from him. Now, one criticism I have of the episode, it's not really criticism, but it is something that I wanted. I wanted more insight into exactly what the deal was there. Like, why were they estranged in the first place? We're shown Miguel having left Rebecca when he decides to go to Houston. We see him attempting to reconnect with his son through phone calls, and all he got was cricket sounds. But we are never actually given any insight into what Miguel's son's problem actually is. Now, we know he didn't necessarily like him marrying Rebecca, but surely there's more to it than that. We see Miguel in the 5 years ahead timeline, which is what's passing for present day at this point. It's a couple months after the Kate and Philip's wedding, and he's taking care of Rebecca. He's not letting the nurse that Kevin hired do anything. He's basically doing all the work himself. And the reason he's doing that he's not accepting help, and his own health is deteriorating, and he's not taking care of himself. We see doctor's appointments where the doctors express concern over his health, and he's not doing anything about it. The reason he's not doing it is he feels it is his duty to fulfill his vows to take care of Rebecca. He's doing this to the detriment of himself because, in his mind, he failed in his life. He failed in his marriage to Sheila. He failed his kids. He can't fail at this, and he won't. We have a series of scenes where Rebecca and Miguel reconnect, taking off from the last time we saw it, which was a billion seasons ago, where Miguel ends up emailing, or rather Facebook messaging, Rebecca to reconnect after Tess is born. And we see the conversations proceed from there, and eventually they're meeting up again. Miguel comes back to town, they have dinner, and Miguel gives a speech about how he regrets, he thinks he made the right decision, but he's sort of regretful of it. And Rebecca takes the initiative. She's the aggressor. She just goes, sits next to him, and kisses him. And the relationship proceeds from there. When we see the Big Three's reaction, which is when they come in on Thanksgiving, accidentally walking in on Miguel and Rebecca kissing, it is not a good scene. Randall doesn't seem happy, but he doesn't seem like he's going to criticize. Kate refuses to say anything at all, really, other than he's like, well, I guess if you guys are happy then. But this doesn't actually seem like Kate characterization from the season, from when this takes place. It doesn't seem like Kate at the beginning of the series so much as Kate that we currently have now, who's grown up. So I'm not sure that her characterization in the scene is accurate, but we really don't have a whole lot of time to do this. It's a very quick scene. So we have Kevin going off straight away, acting like a complete jackass, which is very consistent with his first season characterization. Now, I think this is like 5 years before the show began proper. Maybe a little bit more. In the current day timeline, when we're actually still in the current day timeline, they were celebrating their 10th year anniversary of being married, which was this season. That would bring us to about 4 years before the show began, if I'm correct in the timeline. And of course, they didn't get married right away, right after getting together, so this might even be a few years before that. But yes, when we first met Kevin, he was a selfish, jackassy jerk. He was charismatic, sure, but he was extremely self-involved. At least that is what we saw of the character when we first met him. And he was very slappable. He was very slappable in this scene. I wanted to reach through the TV screen, slap him 100 times, and say what I've been saying throughout the series, though I haven't said it recently because he's grown up a little bit. Kevin, you are a jackass. He ends up canceling Thanksgiving and taking the hat. He's taking his toys and going home. Wah, wah, wah. Look, Kevin, I know you're not exactly happy with this situation. I know you don't like this at all. But out of respect for your mother, you need to act better than this. And this is exactly what I was saying towards the beginning of the series. When I first saw Kevin's reprehensible treatment of Miguel during the Thanksgiving episode. And honestly, I wish Rebecca would have chastised him more for his behavior here, because it was completely and totally ridiculous. This is more fitting for a 5-year-old than however Kevin is supposed to be at this point in the series, which has to be around 25, 30 years old. You ever notice that Kevin is the most obsessed with the hat in this series? It's always him that's concerned with who's wearing it and not. Right up into this Thanksgiving episode, this season, where he tells Toby to take off the hat because he's being a jerk. And to be fair, Toby was being a jerk. In the current day, 5 years ahead from where we are now timeline, the Big Three stage an intervention. They think it's time for Miguel to accept help. And Miguel is very emotional and very resistant to this, for the reasons that I've already stated. And Randall ends up telling him, look, we're not doing this to you, we're doing it for you. You've fulfilled your vows and then some. We love you. It's time that you accept help. Because when it comes down to it, this is an insane amount to put on somebody. Nobody in this situation dealing with Rebecca's illness could do this without help, especially with their own failing health. People commented that both Randall and Kate tell Miguel in this scene that they love Miguel, but Kevin does not. Here's the thing though. Kevin then proceeds to go and find Miguel's son and stage a reunion between the two. If that doesn't say I love you, I don't know what does. Kevin is a very different person now than he was at the beginning of the series, and his relationship to Miguel, which was terrible at the beginning of the series, to now is also very different. So all in all, an emotional, well-done episode. Yes, there are problems. Yes, I didn't get everything I wanted because I was not going to in the first place. Yes, it was rushed, but it was still well done. And like I said, I was happy to get this episode at all. Miguel has been an integral part of this series. I've been a fan of him since the beginning. A lot of people haven't been. But me personally, I always liked the guy. As the series progressed, there was just no reason to not like the guy, other than some people feeling that their relationship was wrong, that Rebecca marrying Jack's best friend was wrong. And I should point out that Rebecca was actually the aggressor here. She is the one that sat next to Miguel and kissed him. Me personally, I always felt that if they had gotten together right away, yeah, that would have been morally iffy. But this was at least 10 years after Jack had died. So it's a very different story in my mind. It doesn't have the same taboo that some people put on this. But again, there are many people who disagree with me on that, and that's fine. If we all felt the same, life would be boring. Anyway, that's all I got for you for this video. If you like this video and want to support the channel, please follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my two Facebook page groups, the Corman Productions one, as well as the This Is Us discussion page. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.